starting to normalize some type of relations with Cuba. Jim Ryan, live in Miami. Good morning, Jim Ryan.
Good morning, and you'll difference of opinions here in Little Havana, the section of Miami where so many thousands of Cubans settled in the 1960s, 1970s, up into the 1980s, really. And polling suggests, actually, that it's almost a 50-50 split among Cuban Americans who support and those who oppose continuing the embargo against Cuba. So the debate went well into the night last night and is likely to continue here today. People expressing their disappointment with the Obama administration, outright fury in some cases. Others saying that, you know what, maybe it's time that relations should be thawed between the United States and Cuba.
Yeah, how much of a shock was it? There really wasn't on the radar, and then all of a sudden the news broke.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, it came as a big surprise to people, I think, who almost immediately then took to their neighborhoods, took to the cafe, and started this broad discussion about it. So you're right. I mean, it came up out of nowhere. I don't think many people were expecting it, but apparently the negotiations, the talks had been going on, not only in terms of the release of people both here and in Cuba, but in a bigger sense, the plan to normalize relations between the two countries. It's been going on for some time, apparently brokered by the Pope.
Yeah, interesting. All right, let's get to the most important thing. When will we be able to buy Cuban cigarettes in the U.S.? Cigars
may be available here before too long, beyond just the Cuban seed stuff that you can buy here right now. It could be in the next few months, maybe the next couple of years before this is all ironed out, and you can bring them back to the United States from Cuba. I think $400 is the max amount that you can bring back here, and of course they're only for your consumption. Don't try to sell those to other people. Okay.
What about traveling to Cuba? When do you think that will happen?
And again, yeah, that's something that will be worked out in the coming months in terms of being able to travel directly into Cuba. Now you can travel to Cuba. I've done that before, but you have to do so through Mexico, for example, flying to Cancun, and then from there you can travel over into Cuba. But presumably it'll be a matter of hopping on a plane in New York or Chicago or Miami and going straight to Havana.
So what does this do for presidential politics? Are now the Democrats, and now does Hillary have to defend this? Is she going to denounce it? Where does the presidential politics stand in all this?
I think she already has come out in support of it. Governor Jeb Bush, former Governor Jeb Bush, who's already sort of taken about as close as you can to a leap into the 2016 race, has already condemned it. Marco Rubio doing the same. So you can see the parties kind of lining up, the two sides already taking a stance on this, taking their ground, both opposing and supporting the president's move, strictly along party lines. So, yeah, I mean, Florida, of course, is an extremely important state in terms of presidential politics, so we'll have to see how this plays in a big sense. But I think both, the Democrats and the Republicans, they look at the polls that show an almost even split among Cuban Americans, who are a big voting group, and so it's a toss-up right now. It seems to be a wash.
Yeah, we don't know how the news was received in Cuba. That's relatively closed society, so anything we hear out of Cuba, we should probably be a little suspect. So we don't know how the news landed there, do we?
Well, yeah, ABC's Jim Avila traveled there yesterday, and he'll be talking with people, so I think we will get a sense of how people are viewing this. But when I was there in 1999, I guess it was, and talked with people about the possibility of one day kind of the normalization of relations. That, of course, was during the Clinton administration, and people were a little leery, certainly, to talk openly about it. But I think there was some sense of hope that a day like this might be coming. So, yeah, we'll have to see, though. You're right. We don't know exactly what the people of Cuba, and of course, there isn't a lot of open polling that happens there. But it'll be interesting to hear what people on the street in Havana are saying about this.
Marco Rubio, a Cuban American, I think his parents emanated from Cuba, and so he's out in front on this. How much power will Congress have to sort of stop this?
They do have, in the fine details of this, certainly they will have quite a bit of authority to knock down these various provisions here. But in terms of what some are calling a prisoner swap, that's already been done. We'll have to see if in fact you'll be able to get your Cuban cigars here in the next year or so, or will Congress not allow that? Will the embargo remain as it is? So yes, Congress will have much to say about the fine details of this thawing of the chilled relations between us and Cuba.
Yeah, I mean, President Obama has lived in a world where there was never any normal relations with Cuba. I mean, think about that for a second. This is truly, Jim Ryan, a historic story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, support it or oppose it. This is represents a sea change in the relations between the United States and one of its once deep, dark enemies just off the coast of Florida. And so, sure, I mean, it's a historic moment. You should see the banner headline across the Miami Herald this morning. After 50 years, it says, a thawing of relations between the U.S. and Cuba.
Yeah, pretty extraordinary stuff. Jim Ryan, ABC News correspondent live in Miami. Jim, thanks for checking in.
Thanks very much, McGaugh.
You got it. 628 here, Big 550 KTRS. I mean, just extraordinary stuff.
It will really be interesting, though, to see how things in that country change. How much it will change for the people of Cuba.
I don't think it's going to change overnight. Probably slow and steady. I mean, when Nixon went to China and opened up China in 1972, right? Still in the 80s, they were still arguing over whether or not China should get favored nation treaty status or trading status because of their human rights violations. Then when President Bush granted that, it opened up. It took a good 20 years before China became...
Right. It's not like all of a sudden...
Right. Right. It's not like, hey, let's go gambling in Cuba tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah. But it has to start somewhere. Pretty extraordinary stuff. 6:30 here, Big 550.